the arena of silence. The air inside the alien coliseum was heavy with heat and sound. Thousands of alien voices chanted from the stands, their metallic echoes shaking the walls. Beneath the bright crimson sky of the Jari homeworld stood one single human. Commander Rylan Ward, stripped of his armor, stripped of his weapons, yet still standing tall around him. The ground shimmered with the reflection of plasma barriers that trapped him inside a perfect circle. 1,000 eyes watched, and above them all, on a throne carved from dark crystal, sat the alien queen herself. Her silver crown glowing with cold light, Rylan could feel the weight of her gaze. It was not hate, not curiosity, but something deeper, a challenge. The aliens whispered among themselves, wondering why this fragile creature from a blue planet would dare step into the fighting pit of their empire. He should have been afraid, but instead he closed his eyes and breathed slowly, remembering the training drills back on Earth, the smell of dust, sweat, and steel. He remembered his instructor's voice saying, "Fear is just energy. Turn it into fire." The gates before him opened with a deep mechanical roar. Out stepped 3 Jari gladiators, towering figures covered in armor that shimmered like liquid mercury. Each held a plasma blade burning bright blue. The crowd screamed for blood, but Rylan did not move. He let them come closer, studying their rhythm, their stance, their arrogance. The first alien lunged fast and brutal, but Rylan sidestepped, grabbed its wrist, and with a twist broke the arm clean. The alien screamed. The plasma blade fell. The second swung wildly, but Rylan ducked low, his fist driving into the creature's chest with the force of a hammer. Its armor cracked. The third tried to strike from behind, but the human spun and kicked the alien in the knee, the joint snapping under the impact. The crowd's cheers turned to shock. Their voices faltered. Even the queen's golden eyes narrowed slightly. This was not expected, this was not possible. The arena lights flickered as if reacting to the chaos below. Rylan stood in the center, blood dripping from his knuckles. Chest rising and falling, he looked up at the queen, and for a moment their eyes met. In that instant, something silent passed between them. She saw not a beast, not a weak species, but a soldier made of something she could not understand. Discipline, rage, and an unbreakable will. More warriors were released, 5 this time, then 10. The queen wanted to see how far this human could go. Her advisors begged her to stop the fight, fearing embarrassment before the Empire, but she raised her hand, silencing them. "Let him continue," she said softly. Her voice carried across the arena. The translators turned it into a whisper that reached Rylan's ears. The human grinned. Blood ran down his arm, but his eyes were sharp. He moved like a storm. Precise and relentless, one by one, the aliens fell. He used their own weapons against them, turning plasma blades into whirling arcs of death. His body burned with exhaustion, but his mind refused to yield. He had fought on a dozen worlds, seen comrades die beside him, and every time he had stood back up, because that was what humans did. The queen leaned forward. Her fingers tightened on her throne. She had seen countless battles. Countless species kneel before her, but never had she seen defiance burn this bright. The human was more than flesh, he was a statement. Every strike was a message carved in motion. "We will not kneel." As the final alien warrior collapsed with a shattering cry, silence fell upon the Colosseum. Not one voice rose, not one blade hummed. Only the wind whispered through the high arches. Rylan stood alone among the fallen. His breath echoed through the open sky. The dust rose around him like a crown. High above, the queen rose slowly to her feet. Her soldiers stared in disbelief. Some trembled, some bowed. They had just witnessed the impossible. A human, fighting barehanded, defeating the finest of the Jari elite. The queen's eyes glowed brighter for a moment, and then dimmed. She whispered to herself, "Perhaps we have misjudged them." Her voice was soft, almost reverent, as if she were speaking to the stars themselves. Rylan wiped the blood from his mouth. His knuckles were bruised, his muscles burned, but his expression remained calm. He looked up at the queen once more, then turned toward the exit. The guards hesitated. None dared approach. When he finally spoke, his voice was low but clear. "Tell your queen," he said, "humanity fights not for survival, but for pride." And as he walked away, the arena remained utterly silent. Thousands of warriors and their ruler watched him go, none daring to move, none daring to breathe. For the first time in Jari history, the Empire had witnessed something greater than fear. It had witnessed the spirit of humanity, unbroken and unbowed. The queen's interest, the night after the arena fell silent, The alien palace was filled with whispers. Generals, nobles, and scientists spoke in secret corners, their voices trembling with disbelief. They had seen something their minds could not accept. A lone human defeating entire squads of Jari warriors with nothing but his hands. The story spread across the empire like wildfire, carried by frightened tongues and trembling soldiers in the heart of the royal fortress. Queen Sarath of the Jari dominion stood before the great window of her throne chamber. The twin moons of her world cast silver light across her pale skin and dark armor. Her long tail flicked once, betraying emotion she tried to hide. She could not stop replaying the image in her mind. The human's movements, the strength in his eyes, the way he fought not like a beast, but like a storm guided by purpose. She turned to her advisor, High General Korath, a towering alien with eyes like molten gold. "What do your scientists say?" she asked, her voice calm but sharp as a blade. The general hesitated. Our healers examined his wounds. "Majesty, he should not be alive, the poisons in the air, the shock waves from plasma hits. His body heals faster than anything we've seen." The queen's gaze narrowed.
"And his mind? He is quiet," Korath answered.
"He refuses to speak. He eats what we give, then trains alone. He does not fear death, nor does he seek mercy." The queen turned back toward the window, the stars glimmering like cold eyes. "A human with no weapon should not have survived this day," she murmured. "And yet he made my army silent." Meanwhile, deep beneath the palace, Ryland sat in his stone cell. The walls were cold and alive with alien patterns that pulsed like veins. A faint humming filled the air, Jari energy flowing through the floor. His hands still trembled slightly from battle, but his mind was sharp. He replayed every movement, every hit. Every glance from the queen, he knew she would come. Curiosity was written all over her eyes, and he was right. Hours later, the heavy door opened, a soft light entered, followed by the rhythmic sound of armored feet. Ryland lifted his head, and there she was, the queen herself, no guards, no chains. Only her and the faint glow from her crown. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them felt electric. Like the calm before lightning, the queen studied him silently, her gaze moving from his hands to his face. "You are not what I expected from your kind," she said finally, her voice low, musical, and dangerous. Ryland tilted his head slightly. "And what did you expect?" "A savage," she replied, "a desperate creature clawing for life." Her expression softened just a little. "But you fight as if pain is your companion, not your enemy." Ryland leaned forward, his voice steady. "You study us, don't you? You call us primitive, reckless, yet every time we fall, we rise stronger." He paused, then added quietly, "That's why you're afraid." The queen's eyes flashed like twin suns. For a brief moment, Ryland thought she might strike him. Instead, she smiled, slow and sharp. "Fear?" she whispered. "No, human. I do not fear you." She stepped closer, her claws brushing the iron bars between them. "But I will understand you." She turned away, signaling to no one. Yet the door opened as if the walls obeyed her mind. "Prepare the human for observation," she ordered coldly. "I want to see how far his limits can go." As she left, Ryland exhaled slowly. He had seen that look before, scientists staring at something they didn't yet understand. He muttered to himself, "You'll regret testing me." The next morning, he was dragged into a vast chamber filled with glowing machines and alien doctors. Tubes and scanners hovered above him. The air smelled of chemicals and burnt metal. The queen watched from behind a glass wall, her eyes never leaving him. They flooded the room with toxic gas meant to paralyze, but Ryland remained conscious, his lungs burning, his heartbeat slowing, his body adapting, his skin turned pale. But he did not collapse. He knelt, breathed deeply, and forced the poison out. His body trembled, yet his mind was clear. The scientists panicked, shouting in their alien tongue. The queen said nothing, her claws pressed against the glass. Her pulse racing, she whispered to herself, "He adapts." When it was over, Ryland stood again, coughing but alive. The gas vents closed and silence filled the room. Through the glass, his eyes met hers again. "What drives you?" she asked through the comm channel, her voice softer than before. Ryland raised his head slowly. "Because no one else will fight for us," he said. "If we don't stand, no one stands for us." Her expression flickered. Just for a heartbeat, as if something within her cracked. She turned away quickly, hiding whatever emotion dared to rise. Later that night, as she stood alone on her balcony, she looked out at the stars. They call humans dangerous, she whispered to herself. They are wrong. She paused, her tail curling around her leg. They are unstoppable. And somewhere far below her tower, in the cold silence of his cell, Ryland smiled faintly to himself, knowing he had already begun to change the heart of an empire. The experiment. The laboratories beneath the Jari Palace stretched for miles, glowing with eerie blue light. It was here that the Queen scientists gathered to uncover what made the human impossible. Commander Ryland Ward stood at the center of a chamber built from black glass, his arms restrained by magnetic fields. Around him floated alien machines scanning, probing, measuring his heartbeat and brainwaves. From behind the reinforced glass wall, Queen Sarath watched. Her eyes reflected the shifting lights. She had ordered this test not out of cruelty, but out of curiosity that burned like fire. She wanted to know if the human's power came from his body, or something far more dangerous, his mind. Begin the adaptation trial, the chief scientist hissed. His hands moved across the console. A new form of atmosphere filled the chamber, thick, heavy, laced with radiation that should have dissolved human lungs. The alien observers leaned forward, eager to watch the man collapse, but Ryland didn't fall. He clenched his jaw and focused on breathing. His veins burned like liquid fire. His skin turned pale, yet he refused to scream. The room's sensors flickered with confusion. His cells were resisting the change, not dying but evolving. His body adjusted, heartbeat slowing, temperature dropping. He's adapting, one of the scientists whispered in fear. The Queen said nothing. She only stared as sweat glistened on his skin, and his breathing steadied again. Her voice broke the silence. Calm yet shaken. You call us primitive, and yet you fear our strength, she murmured. This human is living proof. The gas cleared. Leaving Ryland on his knees, he coughed once, then looked up at the observation window. His eyes found the Queen's gaze. Is this what you wanted, he said, his voice hoarse. To see how much pain a human can take. Her claws tapped the glass. Pain reveals truth, she said quietly. I needed to know if your species is as resilient as legend claims. Ryland gave a tired laugh. You'll find out soon enough. Later. The Queen entered his chamber alone against her guard's advice. The air between them was tense, almost fragile. Why didn't you yield, she asked softly. You could have ended your suffering. Ryland raised his head, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Because yielding means forgetting who I am, he said. We fight because we must, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. The Queen studied him, her expression unreadable. Your body breaks the laws of nature, she whispered. Your will breaks the laws of fear. He smiled faintly. That's what makes us human. That night, when the Queen returned to her private chambers, she found herself unable to sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw his, that defiant look in the face of death. She had seen empires crumble. She had seen monsters kneel. Yet no creature had ever looked at her as an equal until now. The next day, she ordered a new experiment, not of body, but of mind. They placed Ryland in a psychic chamber, a place designed to test emotional control. Images of death, war, and despair surrounded him. Illusions meant to break the strongest soldiers. His heartbeat spiked, his breath faltered. Yet instead of falling apart, he reached inward. His mind grew quiet. He saw faces of his fallen comrades, heard his mother's voice, felt earth beneath his feet. And he found peace in that memory. Outside, the readings went wild. The machines couldn't contain the surge. He's overriding the system, a scientist shouted. Sparks flew. The chamber cracked with light. Then everything went dark. When the backup lights flickered on, Ryland was still standing calm, unshaken. The psychic machine lay in ruins, smoke rising from its shattered core. The Queen stared at him through the broken glass, her voice barely a whisper. What are you? Ryland looked up slowly. Just human, he said. And that's enough. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the sound of machinery dying filled the silence. The Queen turned away, her heart pounding. For the first time in her long reign, she realized something terrifying. The Jari Dominion might not be the superior species after all. And as she left the chamber, her voice echoed softly through the corridors. If one human can defy our empire, she said to herself, what happens when billions rise? The battle reborn. The alien dawn rose over the capital of the Jari Dominion like molten gold spilling across black towers. The Queen's flagship fortress trembled with activity, and in every corridor, one word passed from mouth to mouth. The human fights again, after the experiments, after the sleepless nights and the broken machines. The Queen had ordered a new trial, not of science but of pride. The Empire's most powerful champions were called from across the stars. 10 warriors of legend, each one a killer of worlds, and all of them sworn to crush the lone human before the Queen's throne. Rylan Ward was led through a long hall of silver fire. His body bore new scars, his mind carried new strength. The guards kept their distance, remembering what had happened the last time they touched him. They placed him in the center of a colossal arena, larger than the one before. The stands overflowed with alien nobles, soldiers, and citizens, each burning with hatred and fear disguised as excitement. High above, Queen Sarath sat upon her throne again, but her expression was not the same as before. Gone was the arrogance of an untouchable ruler. In its place was a quiet, curious intensity. She wanted to see not if he could win, but what he would become when pushed to the edge. The drums began, deep and thunderous, shaking the air. The massive gates opened and the 10 Jari champions entered. Their armor gleamed black and violet, their weapons forged from neutron steel. Each was a warlord in their own right, chosen to end this madness once and for all. Rylan looked around slowly, breathing steady. He had no weapon, no armor, no allies, only his will, his body, and the memories of every human who had ever stood alone against the impossible. He whispered to himself, "Let's remind them what humanity means." The first warrior charged. His plasma halberd crackling blue. Rylan rolled beneath the swing and struck the alien's chest. The sound of breaking bone echoed through the arena. The crowd gasped. The second came from behind. But Rylan twisted, his elbow smashing into its throat. The third lunged, claws glowing red, but he ducked, grabbed the creature's wrist, and hurled it into the wall with a roar. The Queen rose slightly from her throne. Her heart racing, though she did not understand why. Her general stared in horror. "He's matching them," one said. "No, he's surpassing them," another whispered. Within minutes, 5 champions lay broken in the dust. Rylan's chest bled, his breathing harsh, but his eyes still burned bright. The 6th and 7th warriors attacked together. Their strikes tore through the air, sending waves of heat and energy across the ground. Rylan moved like liquid, slipping between them, using their power against them. Each motion was born of instinct, discipline, and desperation blended into something divine. When the 8th fell, silence spread like fire. Even the wind seemed to stop. Then the 9th champion, a creature twice Rylan's size, charged. Its weapon, a blade made of pure plasma, descended with the force of a meteor. Rylan caught the alien's wrist, twisted, and slammed his knee into its abdomen. The weapon fell. He snatched it midair and swung upward, slicing through the alien's armor. The 9th collapsed in a shower of sparks. Only one remained. The strongest of them all, the Queen's personal bodyguard, a living legend known as Vorta. His eyes glowed crimson, his armor pulsed with energy. He was silent as death as he approached. The Queen stood, the crowd roaring again. Rylan wiped the blood from his mouth. "Come on then," he said quietly. They clashed like titans, fist meeting blade, sparks flying. The arena floor cracked beneath them. Every hit from Vorta could have shattered a mountain. Every counter from Rylan carried the weight of human fury. The Queen watched, her claws gripping the armrest. Her heart thundered in her chest for the first time. She was not watching a fight. She was witnessing history. At last, Vorta swung with a scream of fury. Rylan ducked, his fist driving upward into the alien's chin. Another strike followed, then another. The giant stumbled, then fell. The plasma blade hissed out, and silence returned to the arena. Rylan stood in the middle of the devastation, chest heaving, dust swirling around him like smoke. He dropped the blade and looked up toward the Queen. Every alien in the stands froze. Thousands of voices that had once cheered for his death were now mute. No one dared speak, no one dared breathe. The Queen slowly stepped forward. Her voice broke the silence, soft yet echoing through every speaker. "Enough," she said, her eyes locked on him. "The test is over." The crowd waited for a command to kill him, to imprison him, to erase his existence, but none came. Instead, she raised her hand slightly. "Bow," she ordered, but not to her, to him. And as the guards hesitated, as the champions lay broken, every being in that arena fell to one knee. The Queen's voice was calm. "The human has proven what no empire could," she said. "That strength is not born from blood or empire or technology. It is born from the will to stand when all else falls." Rylan said nothing. He only turned, leaving the arena through the shattered gate. His shadow long and silent against the alien sun that day. The Jari Empire learned that the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy was not a fleet, not a weapon, not a god. It was a human who refused to kneel. The truth revealed. The corridors of the Jari palace trembled with unease. Whispers slithered through every hall and chamber. The impossible had happened again. The human had defeated the Queen's mightiest warriors. Not with technology, not with strategy, but with something none of them could name. The word Terran began to spread among the servants like a ghost story, spoken only in fear. The Queen sat alone in her throne chamber, the golden light of her world fading beyond the horizon. Her crown lay beside her, forgotten. She replayed every second of the battle in her mind. The strength, the fury, the silence that followed. It was not just victory, it was revelation. "Bring the human to me," she commanded softly. Her guards hesitated, their scales trembling, but they obeyed. Moments later, Rylan Ward was led before her, still bruised, still bleeding, but standing tall. His bare arms were marked by scars that looked almost sacred in the dim light. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was heavy with respect and something deeper, something dangerous. The Queen rose slowly from her throne, stepping down the marble steps. Her armor reflected the faint blue glow of the palace flames. "You have shaken the heart of my empire," she said quietly. "My soldiers kneel, my generals whisper. Even my enemies send messages of fear." She stopped before him, her voice low. "Who are you, really?" Rylan lifted his head, his tone calm but filled with a quiet fire. "I told you I'm human." She narrowed her eyes. "One human cannot do what you've done. You fought our best. You survived poisons and storms that break entire species. You faced death without armor, without rage, without prayer, and yet you live. So I ask again, what are humans?" He took a slow breath, looking past her toward the massive glass wall where the stars burned outside. "You think humanity is weak because we bleed," he said. "But we bleed because we fight harder than anyone else." She tilted her head slightly, curiosity softening her coldness. "You speak as though your kind are gods." Rylan shook his head. "Not gods, just survivors." He stepped closer, and the guards tensed. But the Queen raised her hand, stopping them. "You've seen one of us fight," he continued. "But Earth doesn't send one soldier. It sends legions, fleets that move like storms, ships that bend gravity, and weapons that don't just kill. They erase." The Queen's pupils narrowed. "You lie," he smiled faintly. "Do I?" He gestured toward the stars beyond the glass. "Right now, your empire believes it owns the edge of the galaxy. But just beyond your borders, there are Terran vessels watching, listening, waiting. They were told not to intervene. But if they thought I'd been executed, if they thought humanity had been humiliated..." He paused, letting the silence finish the sentence for him. Her breath caught. "You mean..." He nodded. "They'd come and they wouldn't stop. For the first time in centuries." The Queen felt fear crawl down her spine. "How many?" she whispered. Rylan's eyes glowed faintly in the soft light. "Enough to turn your empire into dust." She stared at him, struggling to understand. The idea of another civilization matching the Jari was unthinkable. Yet the human before her had already proven that their strength defied logic. "And you," she said softly, "are their weapon?" Rylan shook his head again. "No, I'm their message." The Queen turned away, walking toward the window. "Your people sound like monsters," she whispered. "And yet I can't hate you." Rylan's voice softened. "We're not monsters, Queen Sarath. We just remember what it's like to be prey." Her reflection in the glass shimmered as the stars shifted above them. "And what will you do now?" she asked, her tone uncertain, almost vulnerable. "Leave," he said simply. "If you let me." The Queen turned back, her eyes filled with something strange, admiration, maybe even sorrow. "If I release you, my generals will call me a traitor," she said. "If I don't, your people may destroy us." Rylan gave a small, tired smile. "That's the thing about humanity," he said. "We don't conquer to rule. We fight to remind others that we exist." Silence stretched again. The Queen stepped closer until her shadow merged with his. "You've changed something in me. Human," she said quietly. "For the first time, I wonder if the Jari Empire truly deserves to rule the stars." He looked at her with calm eyes. "Every empire thinks it does until it meets something it can't break." The Queen let out a slow breath. her hand rising as if to touch his face, but she stopped. "You are free to go, Commander," she said finally, her voice trembling like a cracked sword. "But know this, if your fleets ever come, I will not kneel." Rylan nodded once. "Then we understand each other." As he was escorted out of the throne room, the Queen remained staring at the stars. Her empire had been built on the belief that no species could ever rival the Jari. But now she knew. Beyond those stars lived a world that forged warriors like Rylan Ward, and that thought both terrified her and filled her with hope. The Queen's choice. The palace of the Jari Dominion had never known silence before that night, yet now it sat beneath a cloak of it. Vast halls where soldiers once marched now trembled with whispers of rebellion. The Queen's decision to release the human had shattered the chains of loyalty that once bound her court. Her generals met in shadowed corridors, their voices sharp with anger and fear. "She's fallen under the human's spell," one hissed, his mandibles clicking. "She weakens the Dominion." "The Queen has lost the sacred will of the Jari," another growled. "The human poisoned her mind." By dawn, their whispers had become orders. The rebellion had begun. High above, in her throne chamber, Queen Sarath watched the sunrise spill across the horizon. Her reflection shimmered in the glass wall before her, but her mind was far from the view. She had dreamed of Earth, of blue skies and oceans she had never seen, of a species that rose from weakness and carved strength from it. She had dreamed of Rylan Ward, standing bloodied and unbroken beneath her gaze. She had freed him against her own council's command, and now her empire wanted her head. When the first explosion echoed from the outer gate, she did not flinch. The floor trembled as fire spread across the palace courtyards. The rebels were not subtle. They came to kill her, to erase her from history and claim the throne in the name of purity. Her loyal guards rushed in, weapons drawn. "Majesty, we must escape," one shouted. The generals have turned, but she stood still, calm and unreadable. "No," she said, her voice soft but firm. "If I run, the throne dies. If I fall here, perhaps the stars will remember me as something better than a tyrant." The guards exchanged looks of horror. Outside, plasma fire painted the sky. The main doors groaned under the weight of explosions. The rebellion had reached the heart of the empire, and then amid the chaos and thunder, something else filled the sky, a shadow vast and silent, moving through the clouds like a storm given form. The soldiers stopped firing, their eyes drawn upward. The shadow descended slowly, and the air itself began to hum. From the darkness came light, familiar, blinding, and impossibly human. Rylan Ward stepped out of the landing craft, his Terran combat suit gleaming black and silver, marked with the insignia of Earth's vanguard. Behind him, hovering above the palace, was a Terran stealth cruiser, the kind of ship that could erase a city if it wished. The rebels froze, their courage dying in their throats. The human had returned. "Get her to safety," Rylan ordered the few remaining loyal guards as he walked toward the burning throne chamber. The flames reflected off his armor as he smashed through the door. Plasma bolts ricocheted off the walls. He moved through them like a storm, every strike calculated, every motion exact. When the smoke cleared, he stood before the Queen. Her silver crown lay broken beside her, but her gaze was steady. "You came back," she whispered, disbelief in her voice. He nodded once, breathing hard. "Didn't plan to. But your transmission reached one of our relays," he said. "Seemed like you could use some help." She laughed weakly, a sound caught between exhaustion and wonder. "My empire turned on me because of you," she said. "And yet, you're the one who saved me." Rylan stepped closer, scanning the room. "You showed mercy when no one else would. I couldn't leave you to die for it." The Queen lowered her eyes. "Mercy," she repeated quietly. "They will call it weakness." He looked at her firmly. "Then let them. Weakness is what every fool calls strength they don't understand." Outside, the Terran cruiser roared overhead, its engines shaking the city as if the sky itself warned the Jari to stand down. The rebels scattered like insects beneath a storm. The Queen looked up at the human standing beside her throne. "They will never forgive this," she said softly. "Not you, not me." Rylan holstered his weapon, his tone calm. "Then they'll have to live with it." She stared at him for a long time, her eyes reflecting the fire and smoke of her collapsing empire. "You've changed everything, Rylan Ward," she whispered. "You've changed me." He turned toward the burning horizon. "Change always starts with fire," he said. "But it ends with understanding." For the first time in her reign, the queen bowed her head not in submission, but in respect perhaps, she said softly, "Our two worlds are not so different after all." As dawn broke fully, the Terran ship rose into the sky, its light piercing through the smoke like hope through darkness. The queen watched it vanish among the stars, knowing her people would never see the galaxy the same way again. In the days that followed, the rebellion was crushed not by human weapons, but by the fear of what humanity might do if pushed. The queen kept her throne, but her rule changed. The banners of conquest were lowered, the words humanity and mercy became sacred across the Dominion, and somewhere beyond the stars aboard his ship, Rylan looked back once toward the alien world, whispering quietly to himself, "Even among monsters, there are hearts worth saving." The Empire's silence weeks passed, and the scars of rebellion still glowed across the skyline of the Jari homeworld. Towers once proud now leaned under the weight of fire and shame. The queen ruled from a throne rebuilt not of crystal and gold, but of steel and resolve. Her empire had been forever changed. Not by war, not by conquest, but by one human who refused to kneel. The galaxy had watched. Every neighboring civilization had seen the broadcast of the arena. The rebellion and the arrival of the Terran ship. Countless empires that once mocked humanity now whispered its name in awe. They called them many things: the unbroken, the Deathworlders, the children of fire, but to the Jari, they were something else entirely. A mirror. Inside the queen's private chamber, the air was quiet except for the sound of soft rain falling beyond the vast window. She stood alone, wearing no crown, her eyes fixed on the stars. In her hands, she held a small metallic emblem, a gift left by Rylan Ward before he departed. A Terran insignia, carved with the words, "We stand when others fall." She turned it over between her claws, whispering the words like a prayer. "We stand when others fall." The door behind her opened, and her aide entered carefully. "Majesty, the Senate requests guidance," he said softly. "They ask what law shall guide the Dominion now." The queen looked out at the skyline, lightning flickering over distant towers. "Tell them," she said, "that conquest ends today. From now on we rule not with fear, but with strength that understands mercy." The aide hesitated. "Majesty, the people will resist." Her golden eyes turned cold as molten suns. "Then they have forgotten what true strength is," she said, her voice firm but calm. "The human reminded me." As the aide left, the queen turned her gaze back to the stars, and for a moment, she thought she saw a faint glimmer far beyond the nebula. A Terran ship, watching, waiting far across that distance, aboard the stealth cruiser Vanguard. Rylan stood before the viewing bay, staring at the same stars. The wounds on his body had healed, but the memories had not. He had seen empires rise and fall, but none had ever changed as the Jari did. Not out of fear, but understanding. Behind him, a young Terran officer approached. "Commander, HQ wants a report. They're asking if the Jari threat is neutralized." Rylan smiled faintly. "Threat," he repeated. "No, not anymore." He turned toward the stars again. "Tell them the Jari learned something better than fear. They learned respect." The officer nodded slowly, then left, leaving Rylan alone in the dim light. He whispered quietly, "And maybe so did we, below." The Jari world continued to rebuild. Not with chains, but with bridges. Human envoys began to visit openly. Terran ships traded with Jari scientists, and for the first time in the Dominion's long history, the Queen's throne stood not above the people, but among them. One night she addressed her world. Her voice carried across every screen, every channel, every mind. "Once, we believed that silence meant victory," she said. "But a human came to us and showed that silence can also mean awe." She paused, her tone soft but strong. "The galaxy fell silent before his strength, not because he destroyed us, but because he changed us." Across the stars, millions watched in wonder as the Queen of the Jari bowed her head slightly and raised the Terran insignia before her. "Let it be known," she said, "that the Dominion kneels not to humanity but stands beside it." The transmission ended, and for a long, unmeasurable moment, the galaxy remained utterly quiet. No one spoke, no one dared to mock. Every world, every empire, every species felt the same weight upon their hearts, the weight of a new era. And somewhere in the deep silence between galaxies, the Terran fleet drifted unseen, not as conquerors, but as watchers of a universe that had finally begun to understand them. Rylan Ward closed his eyes, the hum of his ship like a heartbeat around him. They watched me fight alone, he whispered. And the galaxy went silent. His voice faded into the stars, carried by light that would travel forever, reminding every world it touched what humanity truly was, fragile in form, limitless in will and forever unbowed. And so the legend began. The alien queen and her empire never forgot. The day a human stood alone and made the stars go silent,